if Jesus is perfect theology, how do we wring every bit of theology out of Jesus that we can? How do we learn everything so that we can not only know, but live perfect theology? To live, growing in knowledge and grace. How can we live this? Okay, I'm gonna give you 3 things. The first thing is this. We look at what he taught. You start there. You look at what he taught. Now, if you have a hard copy of the Bible, there's red letters editions of the Bible, right? What are the red letters? The red letters are the words and the teachings of Jesus. And so if you read the teachings of Jesus, you're gonna get a lot of good stuff. What you'll notice is that Jesus teaches things that are profound, but they're really, really often very simple. He'll talk about the kingdom of God, but he will also, he talks a lot about relationship with God and how that affects our relationship to ourselves and our relationship to other people. Jesus really talked a lot. Like you can't miss the relationship Jesus brings from theology to actually relationship. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you 3 quick teachings of Jesus. One is the great commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. Love your neighbor as yourself. That'd be nice. What if you don't love yourself? That could be a problem. That's actually bad news for both you and your neighbor. So how would I go about loving myself? Because there are some of us in here who would be honest enough to say, I haven't learned how to do that yet. Well, the way you learn how to do that is actually in the first part of the great commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Well, how would I love God? Well, we love him because he loved us first. So I receive the love of God. I give the love of God. When I'm in a loving relationship with Yahweh, Kyrios, the one who sent Jesus to die for our sin. When I'm in a loving relationship that I'm completely and totally in my heart, my soul, my mind, and my strength, my body, my emotions, all of it, I'm loved in that way, then now I can love myself. And now that I love myself, I can love my neighbor as myself. Imagine a world where that was happening. My goodness, what would that happen to your neighborhood? Like, what would happen to your family? What would happen to the toxic work? There'd be no more toxic work environment. I mean, it would be revolutionary. So this is red letter stuff Jesus taught. He taught, Matthew 7:12, which is the golden rule. Whatsoever you would have them do, people do unto you, do that to them. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? You like people stabbing you in the back? No, then don't do it to them. Do you like when people are talking about you behind your back? No, then don't talk about them. You like people talking about your wife? Then keep my wife's name out your mouth. Okay, if you, I know, I had to let it settle for a few months and then I have my jokes ready. You like people cutting you off in traffic? No, then don't cut them off in traffic, right? Like if you sat down and just thought of all the things you didn't want people to do to you and then you just didn't do it to them, the world would be a better place. So Jesus teaches some of this red letter stuff right on the nose. It's good stuff. Oh yeah, here's one. Peter, his friend, comes to him and he's like, Jesus, I want to be a good forgiver, but I don't want to get taken advantage of. So, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But I want to go above and beyond. Should I forgive like 3 times? Maybe 4? What about 7? And Jesus goes, no, 70 times 7. Okay, well, what's he doing? Well, he's doing a few things there. One, he's helping to orient Peter to reality. Peter, you're a human and you're surrounded by humans, so you better get good at forgiving. You're gonna have to forgive a lot. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't put up boundaries. That doesn't mean you remain in harm's way, because you love yourself, because you know how loved you are by God. You love yourself and your neighbor enough to create protection and safety and make good choices. But that does not preclude you from forgiving. Amen. So he said, just get ready. It's not 7, it's like 490, probably north of that. Okay, so what's he doing? Now, he's giving not only practical advice, because you can't really separate theology from relationship completely, but the second thing he's doing is helping you understand God, because if you're like me and you've ever made repeat mistakes with God, like, God, I swear I'll never do that again, and then I did it again, and actually I did it a bunch of times, like 7 or more. Or it's like, God, I promise I'll always do that. And then I quit doing it by February. Many years in a row. At some point you start wondering, is God fed up with me? Is God running out of grace? Is God like, I'm gonna have to create some distance here? So as Jesus is teaching red letter stuff, he's teaching us about God and how that would then spill over into our relationships. So if you want to wring all the theology out of Kyrios, you would start with what he taught, but that's not it. That's not all. There's more. The second is you got to look at how he taught. How he taught. It says in the book of Mark, chapter 4, that Jesus never taught publicly without using parables. So he told stories. He didn't teach in fill in the blanks. He didn't teach in multiple choice. He didn't say, hurry up and memorize this. He taught in narrative form. Why? Because those stories and those lessons will keep working over time, and actually they'll keep teaching over time. Yeah. So think of it like this, okay? What is your favorite Christmas movie? Okay? Home Alone? Yeah. Anybody out there? Okay, Elf. It's a Wonderful Life. Die Hard? No, I know that's a controversy. It's a can of worms. That was last week. Think about a great movie. Think about a movie that maybe you started watching as a child and you've watched many, many times. And maybe there's a movie, it might be a Christmas movie or some other kind of great movie that you started watching as a kid and you've now watched as you've gotten older. And what you know about those stories is every time you watch them in a different season of life, you get something new. If you watch Home Alone as a kid, you saw one thing. You identified with little McAllister, right? You identified with all that. But if you watch it as a parent, you see something totally different in that story. Okay, you watch It's a Wonderful Life as a kid, it doesn't mean much to you. You watch it at retirement age. You watch it in a season where you think you've been working real hard and you're not sure what it all means. And am I really making any difference at all? And I put out a lot of effort, but man, you watch It's a Wonderful Life at the end when everybody's showing up to help him pay his bills, you're like, oh man. Okay, why? It means something different in a different season. And so this is why Jesus never taught publicly without using parables. I did a message this last year where I was in Luke 15 and I was talking about the trifecta of parables of Jesus when he taught about the lost coin, the lost sheep, and the lost son. I've heard that story all my life. I grew up in church. I've been hearing about the lost sheep. I've been hearing about the lost coin. I've been preaching almost 20 years. I've taught that story so many times. After 41 years of hearing and teaching the story, this last year, I decided to look at it again and watch it again. And I'm looking at it real close and I start seeing things I'd never seen before in that story. I was looking at it through my life experience now and what I've been, and I noticed, I knew what was the same about the three stories, but I started noticing what was different. And that in the story of the lost coin, Jesus uses the metaphor of an inanimate object to actually symbolize a human being. And so he says, the coin was misplaced. That the coin didn't make a choice, I'm gonna get myself lost. It was placed somewhere. And I said, well, how does that apply to human beings? And now the Holy Spirit's working on my heart. And now I'm starting to get revelation as I'm looking at it after 41 years of having watched the movie. And I come back to it and I'm looking at it and I realize how many people have been misplaced. Your first 10 years of your life, you don't get to pick anything. First 10 years of your life, they didn't ask you who you wanted your babysitter to be. You didn't get to pick what family you were born into. You didn't get to pick what neighborhood you were born into. They told you, go there, do that, shut up, go there, eat this, do that, okay? And so you ended up with rooms with people you didn't choose. And you ended up with family with people you didn't choose. And you ended up in an environment. And so now the first 10 years of your life, there's a decade of stuff happening to you. At 9 years old. You don't even have the faculties emotionally or mentally to be able to sort out. So now here you are in your next decade trying to figure out what happened to you when you were 9. Because you got placed somewhere. And so the story of the lost coin is about people who were placed somewhere that they didn't have any choice, and God's ability to find them wherever they had been placed. I didn't see that for 41 years. Maybe that's why Jesus taught in parables, because he wants you to go watch the movie again. And see what you missed. Look at it real close, sit with it. What's different here? What am I not seeing here? That's theology. And listen, I want you to hear me. If all you do is focus on the red letters of what Jesus said, you'll miss the black letters of what Jesus did. And there's as much theology in the black letters as there is in the red letters. So if you want to wring all the theology out of Kyrios, you're going to have to look at not just what he taught, but how he taught. When Jesus taught the Sermon on the Mount, he taught about unlearning. You've heard it said this, but I say this. You've heard it said this, but I say this. When we put up the Wesleyan quadrilateral, we talked about tradition. You grow up in a tradition. You grow up in a way of doing things and certain things to believe. And with that tradition, if you grew up in a strong tradition, you know that there's social pressure to that. There's essentially what feels like an existential threat if I was to not follow that tradition, if I was to go make my own path. And some of you tried to sort of deviate from the tradition you were in, and they rained it down on you. Okay, your family and your friends and people let you step outside of what you've been taught, and in some way you're in this emotional struggle. Jesus is talking to people. He's getting ready to flip the whole thing. He's getting ready to change all kinds of stuff. So he's talking to them. You've heard it said this, but I say this. You've heard it said this was their tradition, and Jesus is teaching them how to unlearn certain things so you can see it, you can power wash it and get it as pure as you can get. Okay, you got to look at not just what he taught, but how he taught. The third thing is we look at who he was. Not just what he taught and how he taught, but who he was as a person. You know, Jesus talks about, I'm the bread of life. He talks about, I'm the living water. He talks about, I am the way, the truth, and the life. But when you watch Jesus' life and you watch the narrative and you read it, you'll notice there's theology embedded all in there. We did a series this last year called Interrupted, where we were in Mark chapter 6. And we looked at how Jesus, he chose a method of traveling where he went crisscross the Sea of Galilee in a boat, which was efficient, but Jesus didn't use all of the efficiencies he had at his disposal. He could have run across the Sea of Galilee. He could have taken a horse across the Sea of Galilee. He could have teleported himself. He didn't use all that. What did he do? He sat in a boat and patiently waited on the wind to push them across most of the time. And he sat there with people and invested in the disciples. Then he hits the shore, and Jairus, who has a massive sense of urgency because his little daughter's on her deathbed, Jesus could have phoned in a miracle, which he did in other parts of Scripture, but he slow walks with Jairus. And then the woman with the issue of blood interrupts him, and instead of going, well, you're just hemorrhaging, I got to go help this little girl, he stops. And he invests in that relationship, and he ministers to her. And so what is he doing? He's teaching us theology, man. We're seeing priorities. We're seeing that to him, this woman who was ceremonially unclean was just important to him as a girl who's on her deathbed. And so there's theology all in who Jesus was. And you know this, because if you look at your life and you look at the people who have made the biggest impact on you, who have really trained you, the people you've learned from the most, you probably have to rack your brain to get a bunch of notable quotables off of these people. It wasn't that. It was who they actually were. You know, I've been thinking about this. Actually, you know, my mom and dad, I look at they're the two most profound influences in my life. And I look back, I'd have to really think to come up with 10 sound bites, 10 red letter things. It was really their lives. My mom, I remember when I was little, I was watching the news and I saw a tornado hit a city and flatten the city. And they're showing video of these houses that were splintered. And it's like this many people died, X number of people died. And so I realized, man, tornadoes can kill you. And so sometime later, the news comes on, hey, there's a tornado watch in our county. I go to bed, man, I cannot sleep. I'm laying there, eyes wide open. I go wake my mom up. Mom, I can't sleep. Mom was like, what's wrong? I said, there's a tornado watch, man. I'm afraid I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to die in my sleep. And my mom goes, okay. Where do you think is the safest place in the house? I said, basement. She said, all right, come on. We go down to the basement. She flips on the light. She's like, what do you think is the most safest place in the basement? What's the most safe place in the basement? I said, that table looks pretty sturdy. Maybe under that table. She said, okay. Where's the sleeping bag? She gets a sleeping bag. She sets me up a little sleep. She goes, would you feel better sleeping under this table in this basement? Frankly, it was a bad plan, because if everything went down, that table was going to crush me, but whatever. She's like, would you feel better sleeping under there? I said, I would feel really good. And she goes, okay. So I go lay down. She goes, listen, if a tornado hits this place in the middle of the night, okay, you'll probably be the only safe one, but you're probably going to be stuck down here for a few days. So I'm going to go pack a suitcase, and I'm going to get you a change of clothes and some snacks, because you might have to wait it out till they come rescue you. I was like, okay. So my mom, true story, literally went and packed a bag with clothes and snacks and tucked it up under the feeble little table, and I snuggled up to it and slept like a baby. And every time a tornado came through town, I went right back to my post. What was my mom teaching me? Some deep stuff, dude. My mom was teaching me how to enter with someone into their fear. She didn't go, Greg, you're going to be fine. Go back to bed. Shut up. Quit being a baby. There's no way a tornado is going to do that. None of that. She helped me come up with a plan. We collaborated on a plan. She validated my concern and entered with me. Dude, some deep learning there. Deep learning there. When I was a little bit older, we were hanging out with some people who had way more than we had. Nicer house, nicer cars, nicer stuff. I got in the car and I started loathing our standard of living. Wish we had more. Why can't we have what they have? My mom did not say a single word. She just took a right turn and drove into the poorest parts of our community and drove. And I saw folk who were homeless. I saw houses that were breaking down. I saw what my mom taught me was perspective. What my mom taught me, by the way, my mom might have had the same feelings I was having, frankly. Maybe in her own way, she was feeling some of that type of stuff. My mom taught me how to ground yourself when you're feeling some kind of way. You know, you need to come over here and you need to count your blessings. You need to stop thinking about what you don't have, start thinking about what you do have. She gave me no red letters, none. She didn't say any of that. She just drove me through by who she was and what she did. My dad, when I was a kid, we had friends that they lost their job. And so my dad came, and my bedroom at that point was in the basement, because I moved the basement because, you know, tornadoes. And that's true. That's a true story. I'm not proud of it. I'm just telling you what happened. And so my dad said, hey, this family's moving in with us for a while. I don't know how long they're going to be here, but they're going to move in our basement. They lost their job. They need help. Then we can't do everything for everybody. We can do something for somebody. Who he was. My dad at 60 years old decided to run a marathon. He had never run a marathon. You know, knees not all that great, joints not all that great. Decided to run a marathon. So he went to the University of Akron and took a college class on how to run a marathon. Taught me about preparation. Then he went out and he's running the marathon. Mile marker 18. I go to every mile marker. I'm cheering him on. Come on, Dad, you can do it. Built Ford tough, baby. He gets a mile marker 18 and he's shuffling like it looked like cross country skiing. Okay, he's doing this. And he looks over. I'm like, you're gonna make it. And he goes like this. He's like, my dad taught me how to ask for prayer. My dad taught me how to put one foot in front of the other. And sometimes you gotta applaud. Dude, sometimes it's not high knee and pretty, dude. Sometimes you gotta applaud. You gotta just put one foot in front. I'm not a good plodder. I learned how to applaud from my pops. Putting one foot in front of the other. We get to the finish line. The finish line's at home plate of like the minor league ball stadium in Akron. It's at home plate. And dude, they're starting to tear the thing down because it's been a long time. And they put it, I'm just telling you the truth. And we weren't sure, like, is he gonna make it, right? So we're sitting there, man. All of a sudden, like right at the end, my dad comes busting through, you know, the wall at the back. You know, you come through the outfield wall, and he comes through, and his both feet were almost off the ground at the same time. You know, he's coming through like this, okay, stronger than he was at mile marker 18. He comes through that thing, man, we dogpile him. I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, Dad, how'd you do that? that, man? How'd you come through so strong? He said, man, listen, I decided I'm gonna finish in the time I wanna finish in. He goes, so here's what I did. He goes, I stopped outside the stadium because I didn't want y'all to see me come, limping through the finish line. So he goes, I stopped, I caught my breath, I got a big drink of water, I stretched out my legs. He said, I wanted to come through as strong as I can. My dad taught me how to finish strong. How do you finish strong? I don't care if you can tear it down if you want. I'm coming through when I'm ready. I'm gonna finish strong. Taught me how to finish strong. But speaking of finish strong, my dad's in his late 60s, went back to school and got his doctorate. Not necessarily an academic guy, but he just wrote a dissertation. I was on Zoom watching my dad defend his dissertation in his late 60s. Okay? He didn't sit down and give me red letters, dude. It was his life. You want to wring all the theology out of Jesus, you can. Yeah, read the red letters. It's real good stuff. In fact, sometimes it's painfully simple. And you're going to have to just decide you want to do it or not. But if you really want to get all the theology out of it, look at the black letters too. Look what he did. Pay attention to not just what he taught, but how he taught and who